We're here for a special edition of Happy Birthday. We're going to do three birthdays. We're going to commemorate three birthdays. And the three birthdays that we are going to do, I am going to list in alphabetical order so as to not show any preference. The birthdays that we are commemorating are those of Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, and Joe Frazier. Why? Why are we doing this? Because all three were born in January within 7 days of one another. George Foreman was born January 10th. Joe Frazier was born January 12th. And Muhammad Ali was born on January 17th. Is it just happenstance that these three who fought one another in three of the greatest heavyweight boxing events in the history of the sport were born within 7 days of one another? I would say no. Because if I've learned anything in life, nothing is happenstance. Here's another intriguing fact. In addition to being born within 7 days of one another, they were born within 7 years of one another. That's right. The eldest, Ali, was born in 1942, and the youngest, Foreman, was born in 1949. Joe Frazier, who was born in 1944, was 2 years younger than Ali and, of course, 5 years younger than Foreman. All three won Olympic gold medals, Foreman and Frazier at heavyweight and Ali at light heavyweight. And though they grew up independent of one another, never knowing one another until the stage was set, the three of these guys are intertwined like yarns of a colorful sweater. You can't say one name without saying the other. So let's get into it. Cassius Marcellus Clay, aka Muhammad Ali, was the trendsetter. Though he grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, at the time when segregation was still in place, Cassius Clay was the darling of all females of every race. Let's not make any mistake about it. Asian, black, Hispanic, or white, and everything in between, the females loved Cassius Clay. He was charming, handsome, and witty on the outside of the boxing ring. He was bold, daring, and fearless inside of it. He floated like a butterfly and he stung like a bee. Ali S. Clay won the Golden Gloves tournament in his region in 1958 and 1959, and then a gold medal in Rome in the 1960 Olympics. He went to Rome as the most popular amateur boxer in America. He returned from Rome as the most popular boxer, amateur or professional in America. Millions have watched and were in awe because no one moved like Ali. He was poetry in motion. He was a ballerina with a killer instinct. Ali was adored even by white segregationists. He came back to Louisville to a parade after the Olympic Games. He secured a sponsorship contract from 10 wealthy white Southern men to protect him from the underworld of boxing. Before he even won the heavyweight title, he had appeared in movies, on radio, and on television. Everything Ali did seemed bigger than life. Ali turned professional in 1960, and after 19 consecutive wins, he found himself fighting the menacing Sonny Liston for the heavyweight title of the world in 1964, February of 1964. His opponent, Sonny Liston, was the most feared puncher the boxing world had ever encountered. As far as pure punching power was concerned, Sonny Liston was rated over both Joe Louis and Rocky Marciano. Liston had battered every opponent he faced, and he demolished the then champion Floyd Patterson in the first round to win the heavyweight title. Then he proved that it was not a fluke by knocking out Patterson in the first round again in their rematch 1 year later. Ali was not given a chance to win. Coming into that fight, 43 out of 46 sports writers had predicted Liston to win, and not only win, but to win by knockout. Many feared for Ali's safety, but the fight came. Miami, Florida. Cassius Clay, aka Muhammad Ali, bewildered, confounded, confused, and then concussed Liston repeatedly until Liston quit in the sixth round. Ali had won the heavyweight title in spectacular fashion. pulling off the biggest upset in heavyweight history. And the very next day after the fight, he announces that he would no longer answer to Cassius Clay. His new name was now officially Muhammad Ali. Then, just 3 years later, Ali loses the title in spectacular fashion by having it stripped from him by the United States government. Joe Frazier is the middle child of this boxing trio. Just like the middle child in any family, he is often overshadowed by his older and younger brothers. Joe William Frazier was born in Beaufort, South Carolina. He left Beaufort for Philadelphia at age 15 without knowing anyone in Philadelphia. He had no family or friends there. But Joe had heard there was opportunity to make something of oneself in Philadelphia. And in Joe's world, there were no such things as obstacles, just challenges. Being alone actually helped Joe when he began to box at age 16. With no relationships to distract him, Joe could fully immerse himself into the single minded pursuit of boxing. He worked at a meat packing plant during the day and trained to box at night. Joe was single minded inside the ring also. He was determined to inflict pain. His plan involved taking whatever punishment was dealt to him so that he could have the chance to inflict his own. Joe was a seek and destroy machine. His nonstop moving forward with hard punching was a style that earned him the name Smoking Joe Frazier. Joe won his region's Golden Gloves tournament in 1962 and 1963. Then he won a gold medal in Tokyo at the 1964 Olympics. In 1965, Joe turned pro and began working his way up the ranks. He won a share of the heavyweight crown in 1968 and all of it in 1970. But Muhammad Ali's shadow loomed over him. He was considered by many in the boxing world as just a placeholder until Ali returned. But Joe was an accomplished professional. In 25 fights, he had 20 knockouts. He smothered opponents and threw punches with bad intentions. 4 of those 25 fights had ended when the opponent quit. Only one. Only one of his 25 matches had ended in decision. When Ali did return, the contest was ballyhooed as the fight of the century. Both were undefeated, and both could actually lay claim to the heavyweight championship of the world. And then it happened. The fight took place on March 8th, 1971. On that date, Joe Frazier won a unanimous 15-round decision to erase all doubts that he was now king of the hill. George Edward Foreman was born in Houston, Texas. George never knew his real father and was raised by his stepfather, J.D. Foreman. But the situation caused Foreman considerable angst and resentment as a child. Not knowing his real father, George developed anger and discipline issues from this arrangement. In addition, the family was very poor and George kept growing. He grew out of all the clothes that his family could afford to buy him. And not wanting to be ridiculed for his size or lack of clothing, George dropped out of school to become, well, a street thug at age 15. But that idea lost its luster when he found himself in a sewer ditch, hiding from the police. Covered with mud and excrement, George realized that he did not want to spend the rest of his life on the run, in a sewer ditch, or in jail. So at age 16, George joined the Job Corps of America. It was there he took up boxing. Now, George didn't impress anybody in the beginning. He was big and strong, but big and strong means nothing in boxing if you can't hit your opponent. George had a lot of boxing learning to do. So with an iron will, he set out to learn. 3 years later, George found himself at the 1968 Olympics in Mexico City. Though he only had 20 amateur bouts compared to Joe Frazier's 40 and Muhammad Ali's 75 when they participated in the Olympic Games, George was unafraid and determined. And it was here or there in Mexico City that the world saw him destroy an experienced veteran and they became very afraid. George Foreman hit harder than anyone had ever seen before, even harder than Sonny Liston. If George Foreman hit you, he hurt you. Now, let's fast forward to 1973, and the fun begins. Joe Frazier, having defeated Muhammad Ali, is now truly the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. Ali wants a rematch, but Joe has an issue with Ali's attitude and disrespectful behavior toward him. Ali needles and belittles Joe at every opportunity. The two even got into a fight. After their fight, in an ABC studio, while discussing the fight.
Why did you bring? I wasn't gonna bring up the hospital. That shows you how dumb you are. That shows how dumb you are.
I really don't know. I'm trying to listen to this kid saying about something.
He gonna bring up the hospital.
What difference?
Why'd you bring up the hospital? I went to the hospital for 10 minutes.
Why you figure I'm ignorant?
I went to the hospital for 10 minutes.
Why you think I'm ignorant?
Man, you know, you sat down. Sit down, man. Sit down, Joe.
Why you think I'm ignorant?
Sit down, Joe.
Huh?
Sit down quick.
Why you think I'm ignorant?
The brothers are here.
Doing this too?
No. Sit down quick, Joe.
Well, we're having a scene, as you can see. And this time it seems to be for real, because Joe Frazier is really angry. Muhammad called him ignorant, and he's really angry. I don't think this one is clowning at all.
Content to make Ali wait, Joe decided instead to engage in the title bout with undefeated George Foreman in Kingston, Jamaica in January of 1973. By this time, Foreman had been steadily training and fighting for 3.5 years. He was not that raw, powerful youngster with only 20 amateur bouts under his belt. He was an unmovable force that had 37 bouts under his belt and had won 33 of them by knockout. Yes, 33 by knockout. And most of them brutal knockouts. Foreman was trouble with a capital T. And when an immovable force like George Foreman meets a seek and destroy machine like Joe Frazier, something has to give. What gave was Joe Frazier. With the legendary Howard Cosell calling the match, Foreman punched Frazier to the canvas in the very first round, which prompted Cosell to shout emphatically, "Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier!" 5 knockdowns later, the fight was stopped in the second round, and Joe Frazier had become knockout victim number 34. Now, George Foreman is champion. All 3 January babies had made it to the big stage. Frazier and Ali finally have their rematch to decide who gets a title shot against George Foreman. Ali, using clutching, grabbing, and holding tactics, narrowly wins that second bout. He was then matched against George in Kinshasa, Zaire, Africa, in October of 1974. The fight was billed the Rumble in the Jungle. Truth be told, as it was 10 years earlier, the boxing world was afraid for Muhammad Ali. They had every reason to be. He was not that young, fleet-footed contortionist of 1964 who could not be hit. He had been hit, knocked down, and beaten decisively in his bout with Joe Frazier. He had his jaw broken in a loss to an unheralded Ken Norton, a boxer George Foreman obliterated in the first round. Ali's odds of winning against Foreman were even larger than when he fought Sonny Liston 10 years before. Frazier had beaten Ali. Foreman had destroyed Frazier, so it stood to reason that Foreman should easily handle Ali. But all reasoning goes out the window when it comes to Muhammad Ali. Ali shocked the world again by doing the unthinkable and impossible again. Using a tactic which he labeled the rope-a-dope, Ali laid against the ropes, inviting the heavy-handed George Foreman to continually punch at him. Ali blocked most of the punches. Ali then combined the rope-a-dope with the clutching, grabbing, and holding tactics he had employed in his second bout with Joe Frazier. By the 6th round, Foreman had thrown hundreds of punches as Ali clutched, grabbed, held any way he could. Foreman was arm weary and he was tired. Ali could no longer float like a butterfly, but he could sting like a bee. And he knocked out Big Bad George in the 8th round.
Very even fight. Ali, a sneaky right hand. Another sneaky right hand. This time he works over the shoulder of Foreman. It's the combination.
The whole world had just witnessed one of the most amazing series of events to occur in the sports world. Joe Frazier had defeated Muhammad Ali. George Foreman had defeated Joe Frazier. And now Muhammad Ali had defeated George Foreman. It was the golden age of heavyweight boxing in America. Nothing like it had ever been seen before or since. These January babies, these three fierce rivals, needed one another to bring out the best in each other. All three were in or close to the prime when they fought one another. Neither of them had fear of the other or backed down. Each fight was for all the marbles. The winner could say they were the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. So, ladies and gentlemen, think twice, maybe think 3 times before you plan to have a baby in January. There seems to be a lot of fight in them. Thank you, Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, and Joe Frazier. And happy birthday to all three of you, wherever you are. Have a good day, have a good week, have a good month, and have a good year. Thank you.